You've seen Tobe Hooper's 1974 masterpiece, The Texas Chainsaw, so many times by now that you may have forgotten just how effective your first viewing actually was. For myself, horror didn't even really exist before Texas Chainsaw. Monster movies, sure, and movies like Psycho that now obviously deserve the horror banner, but I just wasn't actually horrified by any of them. Chainsaw was something very different, a full-bloodied attack on the senses that somehow broke through all of my protective walls. I couldn't comfort myself by saying that it was just a movie, because it sure as hell didn't feel like just a movie. Why? Why does this movie feel somehow more real and vibrant? Why does it get under your skin and linger there even after the end credits roll? Look closer next time you watch it and you'll see there's plenty of the same shortcomings that many genre films have. But it doesn't matter with TCM. And that doesn't make much sense, does it? It's not the characters. God, no. The cast of college kids are barely developed at all. The kids from the original Halloween or Friday the 13th are practically fully flushed out by comparison. Even Franklin is pretty thinly written when you get down to it. You could make the case for it being the grain and the bleached out visuals, or the echoing, fuzzy audio, or even the film's lack of proper framing elements, but plenty of movies feel like slices of life, don't they? Nope, not like this. A parasocial relationship is one in which someone feels a connection with someone or something they do not interact with in the real world. Ever known someone who's so obsessed with a celebrity that they call them their husband or their wife? Yeah, it's like that, but we have these relationships with art too. You've heard people say that a song saved their life by helping them through a dark period, right? Or that a medieval painting skeeves them out. Or an innocent cartoon from their childhood always elicits an unwarranted emotional response. For myself, I have foundational memories of the song Angie Baby by Helen Reddy that really helped form who I am as a person and as a writer. My mother drove school bus before I was in kindergarten, and she used to play a Helen Reddy 8-track after we let out the kids. The song, if you haven't heard it, is a supremely creepy rock disco hybrid that sounds like the Italian prog rock band Goblin had sex with a female American folk singer. It's awesome. And terrifying to a 4-year-old. I used to dread that song. I knew when it was coming up on the 8-track, and I'd put my fingers in my ears to block it out. Today, of course, I consider it my favorite song of all time. You see, it's that rare connection that makes it special, not the negative emotions that came with it. I didn't hear it for many, many years, but it never left me. When I reconnected with Angie Baby, it was transformed. It brought back how I felt as a young child very vividly. But now it wasn't scary, but oddly transformative. It opened a window inside me that allowed me to see and feel the world as I did as a 4-year-old. That's extremely powerful stuff. Shifting away from Helen Reddy and back to Tobe Hooper, it's easy to see how the Texas Chainsaw Massacre operates in a similar fashion. It's a film that harkens us back to a more primitive time in our horror fandom where things could much more easily still affect us. And TCM is probably the king of bludgeoning a response out of an audience. Okay, but defining a reaction doesn't really explain it, does it? There has to be something about Chainsaw that sets it apart from all the other horror films we watched at too young an age. I mean, I have a few others personally that have a similar history. The television movies Don't Be Afraid of the Dark and Don't Go to Sleep are great examples, but if we were to commission a poll, I'm certain that Chainsaw would be the overwhelming favorite cited. Is it scarier than The Exorcist? Maybe for some, but I'd say probably not. So it's not just that it's a frightening film, though it certainly is. There's something more at play. Why does Chainsaw attach itself to most viewers the way it does? Why do none of the sequels, remakes, ripoffs, or movies that followed in its wake manage to do what it does? Why do we have a relationship with TCM that seems to go all the way down into the sequences of our DNA? I'm convinced that Texas Chainsaw Massacre bridges a parasocial relationship with its viewers specifically because it operates outside perception. What does that mean? Well, it's often pointed out that although the film carries a reputation as a grisly film, there's very little blood in it. And that's true, although there's no lack of gruesome images in general in the movie. It's a film about the rest of the crazy shit that happens in that grainy, sun-bleached world that isn't captured on film. It's not a supernatural film in any obvious way, but it also doesn't feel like it's not a supernatural film. I mean, is Grandpa alive or dead or what? It's not a film about cannibalism on the surface level, but we all sure as hell think it is, right? There's so much more hinted at in Chainsaw than is on screen. At the same time, it's not a subtle film. In fact, the horror elements are blatant and in your face in a way that almost no other film approaches. Maybe something like Martyrs, but that's a story for another time. So, as bad as what we see on screen is, we can't help but feel that there's so much more. and that it's probably even worse. If you've ever tried to learn a foreign language, you might relate. I've tried and failed, but have enough comprehension of a few that when I do understand a bit here and there, I feel a profound sense of connection at that moment. I think about it, asking where the bathroom is shouldn't feel meaningful, but it certainly can be. Because Chainsaw engages our imaginations well beyond what's on screen, it also connects on a level that most horror films simply can't. Because we all know that the story of how that murderous family came to be has to be far more horrible than the deaths we watch, we feel like the film has conveyed to us more than other movies do or can. It's like Texas Chainsaw Massacre is speaking in its own private language to us, and we understand just enough for it to take up residence in our psyches. I've often railed against horror movies explaining too much. When you have the full story, it's simply too easy to rationalize the events. Too easy to look for plot holes or devise your own ways of surviving the situation. The unknown is a genre storyteller's most vital tool because it unlocks the viewer or reader as a participant. We tend to fill in details in ways that are far more personal and meaningful to ourselves when left to our own devices. Prequels are the worst because by explaining how the evil was created, it makes the evil understandable. And if we understand something, we can begin the process of defeating it. It helps, of course, that the film is a belligerent masterpiece of sly paranoia and shocking violence. But it's precisely its nimble ability to tease out our worst suspicions that makes it the juggernaut that it is.